In the previous video I talked about page 2 functions, and I covered inverting the LFO modulation of the frequency and pulse width of oscillator 1. So for the frequency modulation of oscillator 1, you can hear how they're out of phase. If I take off the inversion, they're together. Someone asked me to demonstrate the pulse width inversion. So here's without inverting the pulse width modulation of oscillator 1. And now with the inversion. Without. With inversion. I also talked about the LFO phase with respect to modulating voices 1 through 4 relative to voices 5 through 8, either 90 degrees or 180 degrees out of phase. In the beginning of Pink Floyd's song Welcome to the Machine, there's a sound that oscillates back and forth in the stereo field, and the 180 degree phase shift function on the OB-8 becomes really handy to recreate that sound. Here's a few tricks using the arpeggiator. If you want to arpeggiate a single note, have the synth in unison mode and simply latch one note. Now if you hold the page 2 function and then press the hold button like that, now you can transpose it. Suppose you want to ping-pong that note back and forth in the stereo field. What you do is you leave it in unison mode, go to page 2, and then turn off voices 2 through 7. You have to have voice 1 panned hard left and voice 8 panned hard right. And this creates another sound that is in the Welcome to the Machine song. This particular sound tends to march all throughout the song. Now if you want to play two different notes and have them ping-pong back and forth in the stereo field, then you turn off the unison switch and you play two notes on the keyboard. And by using the modulation section, you can double those notes. And we can also transpose it too. to create an 8-note sequence but have it pan from left to right and right to left, you can use a 5-note sequence and use the up and down function in the arpeggiator control panel. And to do this, you need to also select which voices you want to latch. So each time you press a key on the keyboard, you're going to cycle through all the notes. So I'll go ahead and start by choosing the notes first. So you hear it go from left to right and back to left again. But watch what happens when I choose a different a different number of voices in the stereo field. And then another sequence. And what's interesting is no matter what sequence you have going, you can turn off voices in the page 2 function, but it doesn't affect the sequence or its movement in the stereo field. In order to transpose notes, first of all, you have your sequence held, and then you simply press the page 2 function once, and now you can transpose on the keyboard the lower octave. You have to hold a key in order for the sequence to go. If you want your sequence to be latched so you don't have to press a key on the keyboard to get it going, press and hold the page 2 button, and while holding it, press and release the hold button. And now once you press a key on the keyboard, it'll remain latched. Another interesting thing to do with the arpeggiator is to put a sequence such as this put it in a random mode, and then in page 2 function play around with the phase, LFO phase. That was a 180, now 90 degree. As long as your sequence has less than 8 notes, you can play additional notes on top of the sequence using the keyboard. wanted to show another example of the portamento with the match on and off to make the distinction more clear. So this is with match on. And now match off. You get more of that detune effect with the match off. According to the manual, if the keyboard tracking button is on, the pitch bend opens the filter when you depress it in the same direction as bending the pitch up. But in order to demonstrate that, you essentially have to turn off oscillator 2, turn the button on the performance panel, and set the amount to an octave, and you get this effect. In the previous video I mentioned that you could change the direction of pitch bend by, and I made the mistake of saying lower and down button. It's actually the upper and the amount buttons. You hold those down when you power it up and it'll switch the direction of pitch bend, which I've done because I find it a lot easier to actually bend the pitch this way because I'm also going to be modulating that direction. Otherwise, I'd have to do this kind of action, and the pitch bend, the modulation lever only works in this direction, so it makes sense to have it both in this direction. But I discovered something interesting. I mentioned in the previous video that I thought they made a mistake and silk screened the sample and hold and downgoing sawtooth waveforms, switched them with the upgoing sawtooth and noise waveforms. But when I changed the direction of pitch bend, then they're in the correct position. So for example, if I push this lever up while I lift up on the modulation rate button, I get the proper downgoing sawtooth. Likewise, the upgoing, as is silk screened on here. And then the sample and hold. And the noise. So even though the manual said that pitch bending in this direction upwards, higher pitch, is the correct way, in order to have the silk screened waveforms correctly positioned on here, you have to do it in the other direction. So I'm going to leave my OB-8 pitch bending this direction. Hopefully someone will find some of those things useful and informative. I think I'm going to close this out with a sampling of some of the sounds that I created. Crickets. Some kind of weird animal howl. Birds. primates. This is a factory patch I like a lot. Explosion. There's also a factory patch called Earthquake. I'm not going to play that. It can literally rock the entire room and possibly can blow speakers. On this conga patch, I modulated the filter and the volume with a random waveform in order to vary the loudness of the different strikes. I did the similar thing with this tuned percussion sound. And if you modulate the filter, you get a very different sound.